Hey everyone! So today I'm going to be doing just a general makeup look. Honestly, I haven't really thought about what the look's going to be, but once I get into my palettes, I feel like I'll be inspired. But I wanted to talk to you guys about hydrofluoric acid, and I'm sure you guys all have been exposed to what it is. You might not realize it, but if you've watched Breaking Bad, that's the acid that they use to dissolve the body in the second episode. So we're going to be talking about that and can it dissolve a body? What's the big deal with hydrofluoric acid? So stay tuned to learn more about that. So hydrofluoric acid, its symbol is HF and it's composed of a hydrogen and a fluorine. And together they make hydrofluoric acid, which obviously is an acid, and it's considered to be a weak one. So what's the difference between a weak acid and a strong acid? Well, a weak acid isn't one that doesn't hurt you. Like, it doesn't mean that it's less dangerous or that it'll hurt you any less, anything like that. What it means to be a strong acid is that it dissociates completely in water. So if you put a strong acid in water, it'll form a new product and it won't go back to the original acid, okay? Now if you have a weak acid, it just means that it will make some new product, but then it'll go back to the original and it just has like this back and forth, okay? It won't stay dissociated. And that's the difference between strong and weak. Hydrofluoric is considered to be a weak acid. And that's a terrible way to explain it because hydrofluoric acid is just a terrible chemical to work with. Terrible. In fact, at my job, we don't use hydrofluoric acid because of that fact. And if there's a situation in which we need to use it, we have to have our supervisor knowing about us using it. He has to be in the room, and it's just like, it's a big deal. Also, since we do analyze for hydrofluoric acid in samples that we have, we do have to be very careful around those. Even though they're probably below a scary limit, there's still a chance. We don't know how much is in the samples at the point before we analyze them. So there's a chance that it can be a high amount and could be dangerous. So we have a hydrofluoric acid kit in the lab where it has calcium gluconate. I think that's how you say it. And if you're exposed to hydrofluoric acid, like it falls on your skin, gets in your eyes, you breathe in a fume of it, you need to run to that kit and inject calcium gluconate immediately, rinse the area, call 911, let the whole office know what happened. It's a big deal. So why is it such a big deal? What happens if you're put into contact with hydrofluoric acid? Let's talk about that. So now I'm going to be taking my fluffy blending brush and my Utopia palette. And I'm going to be taking this color here, it's Nirvana. And I'm just going to be putting it in the crease of my eyes. So, hydrofluoric acid. First of all, in the show, Breaking Bad, I don't even know why he picked hydrofluoric acid. Honestly, like, if you really look into it, there's so many better chemicals to be using to dissolve a body. And we don't have to go into what those are because I don't want this video getting flagged or anything. But just know that hydrofluoric acid is not the first choice. Why? Firstly, because you cannot get hydrofluoric acid in the closet of a high school. I'm sorry, but there's no way that's happening. It's so hard to come by hydrofluoric acid in general. Like, we don't even have it in our lab. We just analyze it in samples that we receive, but we don't actually have hydrofluoric acid in the lab because just no. It's only for specific uses, and if we need it, we'll get it, but we do not have it stored in our lab, and we do not just freely be like, oh, pour up some hydrofluoric acid. No. We use sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, and those are pretty intense. Like, especially the sulfuric acid. There's one mix that we have to make where it's half water, half sulfuric acid, and it takes a whole day to mix those because of how exothermic the reaction is. And exothermic means that it releases heat. So even if you're not putting it on the hot plate, you're not heating it up at all, just the fact that you're mixing water and sulfuric acid generates so much heat that you have to pour it in small sections, and it takes a day. It could take a few days actually, depending on how much you're making, but it's a ridiculous situation. And we use that more freely than we would ever use hydrofluoric acid. So also, you have to store it in a very specific way. And you probably remember from that episode, Walter White, that was his name, and Jesse's like the drug dealer or whatever that he works with on the side. He tells Jesse, go get a plastic container for us to put the body in and to put the acid in. And Jesse's just like, I can't find the container. So then he just goes home and puts the body in the tub. Now the tub is made of porcelain. And yeah, you see where I'm going with this, right? That the hydrofluoric acid goes right through the porcelain, but it wouldn't have gone right through the plastic because you can store hydrofluoric acid in plastic, but it'll go straight through porcelain, straight through glass. So it's already like a really dangerous chemical in the first place, and it's a very specific chemical that you have to store in a very specific way. So I don't know why he was expecting Jesse to just like be able to handle that acid all by himself. Like, terrible, terrible idea. But also, if there's a fume of hydrofluoric acid, like you pour it and you get some sort of fume of it and you breathe it in, you can drown because it becomes a liquid in your lungs and just drowns you just from breathing it in. So you have to be in a whole bodysuit to be able to deal with it. And also, if you're not wearing the right gloves, oh my gosh, it just will eat right through your gloves. If you have gloves on, but your sleeve pulls up a little bit and you have your wrist exposed, If it splashes in your eye, any of those situations would result in something so terrible. Now, let's say you did happen to get some on your skin. You won't feel pain right away. You won't. And so you might think, oh, well, not bad, right? Well, let's talk about what happens. So I went ahead and took my Utopia palette and put Sanctuary in as kind of just to blend it into the skin here as my transition color, just to get that blue to blend a little better. And then I'm gonna grab my Night and Day palette. I believe that's the one. Yes. So my Night and Day palette, I'm gonna be taking this color Blackout. It's just black. And I'm gonna be putting it on the outer corner right here. So if you come into contact with hydrofluoric acid, like I said, it won't hurt right away. You might not even, if you don't know that it's hydrofluoric acid and you think it's just water or something, you might not even realize that it's not water for a while. But what it does is it actually affects you internally a lot more than on the surface. So when it goes into your body, it starts to dissociate and leaves fluoride ions just floating through your body, right? So it's F-, if you guys have taken chemistry and kind of want to visualize what it looks like. It's a negatively charged fluorine ion. And that ion wants to pair with magnesium and calcium, which you see where I'm going with this, right? We have calcium in our bones, we need calcium and magnesium to have our nerves function correctly, and it's very necessary in order to keep our heart beating. So it starts pairing with those, they start forming compounds, and it starts to crash out of solution. So what that means is everything's a nice solution. It like you can almost imagine it as, oh, it looks like water. It looks like there's nothing floating in it, right? It looks pure and clean and everything. But then when they start to form those new compounds, you start to see stuff falling out of the solution. You start to see like particulates. We call it precipitation. So that's what you should imagine when I'm talking about this. It crashes out of solution in your body and you start to have these crystals in your body, which is already bad enough on its own because you're not supposed to have those crystals in your body. But what's worse is that those crystals are being made of things that are necessary in your body. So you start to lose all the magnesium and all the calcium that you're using, and eventually your heart stops pumping because it doesn't have any more calcium or magnesium to make it function. And that's a pretty slow, painful death. That's not something you want to go through. That just sounds awful. But going back to the whole idea of dissolving a body with it, we can see how good it would be at dissolving bones because they're made out of calcium, but it wouldn't do a very good job at dissolving flesh. And, gross, flesh, I hate that word. But yeah, so let's do a little review. Terrible idea to use hydrofluoric acid because it's so hard to come by. Also because Jesse is inexperienced and could have really harmed himself or others by using it. And he could have really harmed himself, like really bad. And thankfully nobody was on the floor below them when it eventually ate through the porcelain of the tub, because imagine you're at that floor and like hydrofluoric acid just falls on you. Oh gosh. Ugh. Also, it would take a long time to dissolve a body. It's not ideal. I mean, everywhere you slice this, it's not an ideal chemical to use for that. And I just, such an intense acid, just ridiculous. So now you can see that I did a little cut crease thing with my concealer, and I'm just going in with the white primer that I have, and I'm just gonna go over that concealer so that I get it as light as possible before putting glitter onto it. And I did want to mention that when you get hydrofluoric acid on your skin, remember, it's not necessarily the pH that's affecting you, it's not necessarily how acidic it is, because your body it does a pretty good job at regulating pH and, dealing with stuff that's at a different pH than neutral or than the body itself. It's really about those fluoride ions that dissociate and get into your bloodstream, get in there and start pairing with magnesium and calcium. I mean, those are some major important things in your body that it just kind of like eats up and uses for its own purposes. So if you ever come into contact with hydrofluoric acid, I mean, I don't know if anyone that's ever watching this ever will, but if you do, you need to rip gloves off if you're wearing them. You need to call 911. You need to rinse the area. You need to inform somebody of what happened. Like, don't be afraid to deal with it in that way, because it's such an intensely dangerous thing that, like, if the proper precautions aren't taken, you will die. Like, it's not even, you will die. You might not die right away, which is even scarier in my opinion. It might be a couple days or a couple years of you just, slowly deteriorating. This is so sad. I'm gonna be going in with my glitter brush, and I'm gonna be taking this color Sunrise. Sorry, got the plastic here. It's because the names are on the plastic. They're not on the actual palette itself, which I absolutely despise. But anyway, it's this gold glitter color. It's really nice. So I'm gonna be going in with that and going over the white. Now I'm sad. Like, I kind of wish I had a more uplifting ending to this topic. But I mean, acids are cool, like, lemon juice. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, not all acids are dangerous. Like I just said, lemon juice. A lot of things are really acidic in our daily lives, and we use them and we're completely fine. So, hydrofluoric acid, you probably will never come into contact with it, but it's just a cool thing to know, especially because it's in pop culture and, a popular TV show. And it's really interesting when TV shows and movies and, all that, they use science, and it's really cool when they use it in a truthful way, or like in a really accurate way. It's really cool. I feel like they definitely could have done a way better job and had like a different chemical being used for this in Breaking Bad, but there's so many other movies and TV shows that actually like talk about chemistry, and it's so cool. And especially after going to school and learning about science, and then you watch popular movies or shows that you've seen before and you can actually understand them this time, like that is really cool. I love that. So I was actually just starting college when Breaking Bad came out. I think maybe it's when I started watching it. Maybe it came out like few years earlier, but I started college in 2016, so you guys can do the math. But yeah, so it was really cool to, you know, see that. I never actually finished the show though. It just kind of got a little like redundant for me, but maybe I need to like actually give it a try.